Hey everybody, Assalamu alaikum. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notify button so you know when you're getting new episodes, and we just want to grow this project. I thank you in advance. Without further ado, let's get it rolling. The Shout Out Show. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. I hope that you're having a great day. It is Labor Day. I hope you're getting whatever it is, your virtual cookouts in, your social distance eating in, whatever it is you can do to maintain what it normally felt like to have fun and family during this time, Labor Day. I hope you're kicking in, you're doing that thing, if you will. And we give a shout out to Sister Ree, who has some food waiting for me after the show, so I will not be going long, just so you brothers and sisters know. And I'm hoping, if you're not here on the Shout Out Show, I hope you're kicking it with your family, you're getting that barbecue, you're getting that potato salad and things like that. And we get back to the point we celebrate family. We have to get back to the point that we celebrate family with purpose, with consistency, and here's the last one, without a cost of business. That we understand that each and every one of us has a part in our development, our spiritual and emotional growth, and we have to frame that. So let me go through the top 1-2s here. The Shout Out Show. Number one, if you are a first-time visitor to the Shout Out Show, I'm asking very please to hit the subscribe button, hit the link button. It's my hope that we'll get to 100 subscribers by the end of the month, inshallah. So if you know anybody, send it to the show. Have them hit the subscribe button and the link. And if we can do that, then we can actually get some apparatus from YouTube that allows us to even broadcast a little bit more and have a bigger show. That's number one. Number two, if you are a part of the Shout Out family, you know how I feel about you, but I'm going to say it anyway. I appreciate you for coming to the show. That's number one. You make the show what it is. That's number two. And number three, I always want you to feel welcome. Always want you to feel welcome. And I appreciate it. Now, brothers and sisters, today's show, it's a little shift. Yesterday we had our potluck Sunday was actually about whatever happened to loyalty. In following that talk, that discussion, whatever happened to loyalty yesterday, I came across this idea. I talked about us being in an election cycle, if you will. I really want to talk about something that I've been talking about. I talked to my brother about it earlier today, and I told him the topic of the day. I normally don't do that. But it's a conspiracy to forget our elders. Now, some people are going to go, no, preacher, I can never forget my elders. I'm not saying it like that. There's a nuance to what I'm trying to tell you. It's the ability to forget what our elders used to be. Forget how important they are. Forget how central they are in terms of community growth and development. Forget the fact that our elders are the people who hold pieces of history. In the African tradition, they had a character in the African tradition called the griot. And the griot maintained and remembered the stories of the village. And he was basically he or she was a walking library. And he was a walking library, walking library to let folks know that before your time, these things existed. And the reason why these things existed was to let folks know that there was a framework. There was a method to the quote unquote madness, if you will, but also there was a method, quote unquote, to the functionality, if you will. And I see that slowly dissipating away these days. So to forget our elders is also to forget what they mean to us. Because right now, our senior citizens are in a political play, if you will, whereby politics is beginning to frame who they are. And I can't even say beginning to frame who they are. It's been framing who they are for quite a number of years. The role of the grandmother and the grandfather who work their life. Let me frame this even better. They go through a process of life where they are husband and wife, married, they produce their own children, their children produce their own children, and grandma and grandpa go on trips. They go around and they visit other people. Sometimes they go to senior citizen homes, and that's the flowery picture. But the real picture is we've forgotten what our elders need, and that's to live their best life. Elders are under pressure now. Elders now find themselves living under not consistency, but the consequences of decisions their children made. So they're not able to get out of the house. Sometimes they're in their house, but they're in their house with their children and their children's children, and in some cases, their children's children. That model of grandma and granddad living their best life has been shattered going out a couple of years because the economics changed. I don't know if you guys know this, but it was a couple of years ago, it was nothing to walk into a McDonald's early in the morning and be greeted by the senior citizen. Not that they needed additional income. They needed that income. They depended on that check. They had worked 50 some years, and here they are at McDonald's because the ends weren't meeting. And that same conspiracy, if you will, is what we're looking at now. In any election year, and most of you guys know that, our seniors will be targeted. Right now, our seniors are targeted by the Republicans because they realized the last election they would not have won if Donald Trump did not get the senior vote. Now that thing is in question. It's in jeopardy. So the seniors now find themselves hamstrung by someone who basically has found a way to affect their life mobility. When I say life mobility for seniors, that revolves around family, but it also revolves around health. So the question now is, health is being held up for our seniors who develop, brothers and sisters. I have a mother. My mother has had numerous health issues throughout the years. I want to say the last 40 years. But I want to say that there was a system in place that her bills, medical bills, prescription bills, hospital bills, while they were high, they were somewhat manageable. Let me say it again. While they were high, they were somewhat manageable. And what I'm saying is there was a safety net. We now find that that safety net is being taken away. We find that it's being taken away in terms of health, but we also find that it's being taken away in terms of family structure. When I say family structure, brothers and sisters, listen to me very carefully. This could probably cause some problems. One of my big issues with Black Lives Matter is in their Constitution. Hear me. In their Constitution, there's no allowance or mention of welfare for our seniors. Now, some of you guys thought I was just going to go this whole Trump route. No, I'm going to go across the board. I got to be fair. This whole push for social justice has an enormous void, an enormous disregard for our seniors. Now, what does that mean? On one side, you have the seniors being played. On the other side, we have no protection. This is something you should know about all the past all the civil rights movement and things like that. Why it may have been for justice, might have been for voting, all of that. It always served to uphold, maintain, and expand the dignity of seniors. The dignity of seniors is what we are forgetting about our elders. Their dignity, the ability to live in a house and have food without being compromised by policy or politics is a birthright. That is in a manna and a trust from God. We now see that it's being played out. The idea of having payroll cuts, knowing that it's going to cut into Social Security, is a crime, brothers and sisters, but nobody's speaking up. I'm speaking up. The idea that for some people, you can get benefits like in the rural areas where, guess what? There's not a whole lot of black people. But you can get experts out in those rural areas to help service those communities, but you can't get those same experts in the inner city. Somehow it doesn't work. The inner city where, I'm going to say this, the inner city where our elders, in some regards, live in hostage situations, not because of the children, but because of the economic situation that they find their children and their communities in. I said it. We find that our elders now are not living their best life because they're having to help everyone else survive. Let me say it again. Help everyone else survive. I have a friend of mine. He has a baby. He had an issue with his job. He and his wife both work. The mother came over from another country. No, the mother and the father came over from another country to watch the infant. And they pledged a year to stay there and watch the infant and make sure the infant was great so that the father and mother could work. But it was a choice. It was a choice. And the way they were able to do it was because in their social economic presence or environment, it was allowable. Let me say it again. It was allowable. It was understood. And the government shape-shifted to make sure they could support that thing. We're still talking about maternity rights. The ability of a woman to recuperate after having a baby. We're still arguing maternity rights. And we're not even talking about our seniors who, at the most important and the most needful time of their lives, don't have the help and support. Now, I hope, like many of you, that we get to see our babies grow up. We get to see the opportunity to be grandparents. It's a beautiful thing. It's called life affirmation. But I find that the life affirmation, brothers and sisters, is slowly being interrupted. It's slowly being twisted. That conspiracy largely has to do with the health, if you will, of our seniors. One of the things that COVID showed, and there's been some good things that Trump did, to help. The chronic situation came in handy. The Chronic Act came in handy. But there's a lot of things he didn't do to help the situation with COVID. And let me be really, really clear. Let me be extremely clear. He didn't do it because it didn't benefit him. The Republicans didn't do it because it didn't benefit them. If you're going to be on Facebook from now to the election, you're going to get a lot of ads. And if the algorithm works, if you're over the age of 50 or 55, you're going to get a lot of ads from Republicans because they realize the elders. Now here's a strategy now. Here's a strategy for the elders. Starve them of their basic needs. Starve them of their basic needs and then make them afraid that they'll never get it back. Woo! Starve them of their basic needs and then threaten them that they'll never get it back unless you do it through me. Now, people like that, that's demonic. That's absolutely demonic. And then on the other side, we have a culture now. And everybody's bought into it. We have a culture now that does not necessarily understand the value of grandparents. I'm going to say it. I don't care. LGBTQ, they don't understand grandparents. They have families, but those families are outside of the traditional trajectory of how you get from point A to point B being a grandparent. Did you hear what I said? Adopting children, things like that. Okay, I can't do anything about that. But that person, that grandparent, that person that gives you that lineage is extremely important. And people going to preach, what do you mean? See, I tell people, do your homework. I remind myself, do your homework. When I read the manifesto for Black Lives Matter, it said a lot of things. Okay? It said a lot of things. The past movements, if you will, all of a sudden the past movements are invalid because they weren't inclusive and they were male chauvinistic. And I'm like, yo, You're only here because of those movements. But when I went back to read it, and I read it and I turned the page, I said, there's no accountability, there's no acknowledgement, there's no respect, there's no efficacy for how you work with, there's no communication about our elders. So before we go on this whole politician thing, understand there's a lot of it going around. And if I can even be a little bit more specific, misinformation is at an all-time high in terms of our seniors. If you want to point the blame, if you really want to look at some of this stuff, let me tell y'all something. You can connect the dots with this. I'm going to tell you why, in my opinion, a lot of the elderly died. I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, why a lot of the elderly died. A lot of the elderly died because, yes, they had pre-existing conditions. But it's also my point, when you look at the studies, and they talk about how very, very, very young children, extremely young children, can have COVID, but they're bouncing around, they're okay, they may get a little sick, but they'll recover. I'd love to get the statistics on how many of those young kids in elementary school, middle school, how many of them were living with a grandma, were living with a grandpa, were being watched by their auntie, watched by their uncle. In my own family, I watch my aunt raise her kids, turn around, have her kids come back, and then her kids' came back. It happens, brothers and sisters. It's going on right now. You see what happened during this whole COVID period? Is that we forgot our elders. We forgot, in many regards, the situation we had put them in. You hear what I'm saying? The situation that we had put them in and the situation that we had left them in. I vividly remember a certain individual, when they were asking about the COVID deaths, he said it won't go past 60,000. Brothers, we're on a steamroller, 200,000 people. 200,000 people. We have infection rates that are going back up again in places that had them going down. France, the UK, Italy, places like that. I'm not sure about Italy, but definitely France and the UK has seen spikes. New England is seeing spikes. And the situation and scenario is so dire because we've been here before. There's nothing worse than being someplace before, knowing the problems, and still not being able to come up with a valid solution. Our seniors, they mean a whole lot more than election votes. Don't want to hear about Medicare or Medicare D or private hospital insurance plans. No. The seniors that I know, the elders that I know, I'll be honest, they mean a lot because they inform me about me before I got here. They inform me about history. It's interesting when I watch politicians, particularly this president. He does not like people who have historical awareness and context. He does not like them. And the reason he does not like them because he does not behold history. He comes from a space where if you don't like the history, you rewrite it. Either you get people to agree with what you're saying, or you wait for them to die off and you rewrite the story. A.K. John Lewis. He could not stand John Lewis because everything he would say for black people, he's a man who did it all. And he hated that. And it was fun television to watch because John Lewis was above the fray in so many different ways. And he was one of our last acting seniors. John Lewis, Elijah Cummings, C.T. Vivian. All these people, brothers and sisters, were above the fray. They could tell you what America was supposed to be as opposed to what it is now. They were our griots. And what you have in this microwave society right now is a full-on conspiracy to make sure that we forget these people. That we forget a C.T. Vivian or John Lewis. All these comedians out here, self-included, I have to make sure when I talk to comedians. I said, you hollered about Richard Pryor, but you can't forget Dick Gregory. Because Dick Gregory gave you Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor gave you Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence. But Dick Gregory was the one that started it all. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, whom I respect. And people go, you can talk about religious ideology, but I look at a body of work. This whole thing with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, it was very interesting because people didn't seek his advice. I talked to people who were in the NOI. People didn't seek his advice. And the reason they didn't seek his advice, brothers and sisters, because his advice comes with a heavy load of historical imperative. He's not giving you conjecture. You see what I'm saying? He's giving you the facts. People didn't want to talk to John Lewis because John Lewis gave you the facts. He filled in the blanks on so many things that people couldn't even understand. He filled in the blanks. He was an expert. He had specific knowledge about specific things. And hearing this thing, I remember reading something about an outbreak of COVID on one of the Indian reservations. I hate to say that word. Indian reservations. That's just criminal. See how bad that word sounds? You talk about forgetting your elders? Okay, cool. One of the big things they faced in terms of implementing an effective COVID policy to save lives on those reservations. And I want everybody to know, it wasn't in the news, but COVID hit hard on Indian reservations. Hit extremely hard, and they have their own hospitals, but they weren't able to access, if you will, the proper care that they needed. In fact, the government held up money. They didn't give them the money they need. They had to go in their own pockets, brothers and sisters, in their own pockets, and get more beds, get more medicine, get more testing, all that type of stuff. And people go, and they did it in a bad economy because the casinos that are attached to a lot of these reservations were flat. They were dead. So they were dealing with high unemployment and high COVID. One of the things that I want you to pay very close attention to, and I'm trying to remind you, and I'm going to try and get it straight. One of the nuances that they faced with the nuclear family of Native Americans was that it was customary that the children spent time at the feet of the elders. That the children spent time at the feet of the elders. This was custom, hundreds, thousands of years. And to save their lives, they had to break that. Do you hear what I'm saying? They had to break hundreds of years of tradition. And the elders had to say, for the sake of saving our lives, we need you to stay over there. We need you to keep the children there. We can't guide them. So let me put a bow on this. It's actually hard to put a bow on this. I talked about the LGBTQ communities forgetting our elders. It's strategic. I talked about Donald Trump forgetting our elders. It's strategic. The question is now, do we have the intestinal fortitude to not only remember our elders, but hold them up? Do we have a call to action, brothers and sisters, to inform the masses that these are the people who will save us from ourselves? Now, some of you are going to preach, what are you saying? I'm saying we don't know. Put down your smartphones, put down your iPads, shut down all of these podcasts. If you can't inform yourself what your elder is telling you, or what your elder has instructed you to understand, to memorize, to carry on in your daily life. We live in a mess, brothers and sisters. And it's really easy to forget our elders. You know why? Because we don't respect them. And so the misinformation that you will see come on Facebook, thank you, Zuckerberg, is a small campaign now to make sure that they stay scared and desperate for a vote, not for their quality of life, not for empathetic understanding, not for compassion or mercy, for a vote. And when the vote is gotten, they will be forgotten. I'll be doing the same podcast talking about how we forgot our elders. Well, I'm not going to forget my elders. This won't be one show. Inshallah. This will be a series of shows. I'm going to bring on elders. And I'm going to sit back, shut my mouth, and let them inform me. Let them not just inform me, but inspire me in different ways whereby I can be of use to them. So whatever you guys could do today, pick up a phone. When I say call an elder, I don't mean mom and dad. Call them too. Call Miss Maybell down the street. Call Sister Sephora down the street. Make sure they're all right. Because the information they have is so rich and robust. So rich and robust that if they leave and they don't share that information with you, the crime and the sin is on us. So as a wrap up, brothers and sisters, there were a lot of things in this talk. There were a lot of things on my mind. Sometimes I don't get them out. Complete thoughts. So forgive me for that. And while they're not complete thoughts, they're definitely real thoughts. And so as we begin to move a little out of this COVID thing, brothers and sisters, realize generations before us suffered. Let me say that again. Generations before us suffered. And I don't mean 20, 30 years ago. I'm talking about that 65, that 7-year-old brother or sister who, in their own mind, in their own actions, in their own times, protected us, gave us guidance, gave us love, and gave us understanding. Think about that now. Who gives that to you right now? Who cares? There was a time, brothers and sisters, I don't know if this ever happened. What's going on, brother Mikhail? Assalamu alaikum. There was a time one time when I got my driver's license. So let me frame this correct. My grandmother was losing her memory. My grandmother died of Alzheimer's. She lived to be 94 years old. May Allah be pleased with her. But there was a time whenever there was a funeral in the neighborhood, my grandmother would want to go. So yeah, imagine I'm a 16-year-old kid driving my grandmother all these funerals. And there was one time I got the wrong directions or something. I was running late, I'm not gonna lie. Made a left when I should have made a right, and we pulled up at what we thought was the correct funeral home. It was the wrong funeral home. I looked in the casket. It was a light bright, damn near white, probably a white guy. And I told my grandmother we're in the wrong place. I said, Grandma, she said, boy, what's wrong? I said, that's a white man. And it's not any white man I even think you know. These are mostly white people. Let's get out of here. And my grandmother put her hand on my knee and said, according to this program, that man lived to be 94 years old. And she said, we're not going anywhere. We're going to respect that man and how he lived his life, even if we don't know him. And I, brothers and sisters, was humble. Thank you, sister. I was humble. And I learned from my grandmother. Why, when I was a kid, why would I have to sit with the elderly? Miss Hill had a stroke in her 50s. I hadn't talked for 20 years. You know, I would have to go sit with Miss Hill and talk to her. And my grandmother said, she was there for you when you were a baby. She said, you don't remember the times Miss Hill watched out for you when you were a baby. And it was interesting. The more I talked to a senior, the more I learned about other seniors. It's like a network that we overlooked, if you will. But in that guidance, In that example of having to stay for that funeral, we didn't go to the repast. But in that example, she framed for me the value of life lived and life shared. And if you're dealing with an elder, you're dealing with somebody who's had a whole lot of life lived and a whole lot of life shared. So yeah, you're a 16-year-old kid, you're impatient, you're a whole lot of other things. However, thanks to my grandmother, I wasn't a forgetful one at 16, and I'm not a forgetful one at 53. And I would encourage all of you guys during this election, they're talking about get out the vote, make sure you vote. Here's who wins the election. The people who don't just go to seniors, it's people who sit with them. Sit 5-10 minutes with them. Find out how their day was, when I say find out how their day is, what they're talking about, what's important to them. Because one of the things we forget about our elders is that they deserve compassion and they deserve mercy. So listen, everybody, that's my show. I hope you get something out of it. No knock to the LBGT crew, but I don't really see you guys advocating for the elderly. Until I see that, my stance stands. And if you want to reach out to me, cool. And that's all I got to say. Everybody, stay blessed. We will talk soon. See you tomorrow, inshallah.
Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your Shout Out Show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next Shout Out Show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from devalue. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out devalue.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.